Okay, so how many of y'all are familiar with the story of Esther? All right, we all are. We're going to take a deep dive for a few weeks. It's very, very interesting because some of the same characters that we went over in Daniel, they're linked to Esther. All right, so Esther and Daniel are part of a group called the diaspora. I don't know if any of y'all have ever heard that term, but it's akin to like scattering seed, like a farmer scattering seed. All right, so these are scattered Israel seeds in a foreign land. That's how you want to look at it, so easy way to remember it. But Esther trusts God. Now, they gave you the basics this week, and I added to it. It wasn't enough for y'all. I don't want to give you something for a 13-year-old. So y'all going to get the whole thing. Okay?
For Ezekiel, we need something for her.
Woo! Ezekiel. Our memory verse, 1 Peter 5:10, but may the God of all grace, who called us to his eternal glory by Christ Jesus, after you have suffered a while, perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you. So let me start off with a few verses. Now, it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus. Sounds like I'm Ahasuerus. You'll just be impressed I could say that. And it's right. This was the Ahasuerus who reigned over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. In those days, when King Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushanite citadel, that is Susa. Most of us are familiar with Susa instead of this term. That in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast for all of his officials and servants. The powers, this is a key part right here I want you to pay attention to, of Persia and Media. The Persians and the Medes. Okay? Isn't that who teamed up to take Babylon? That's why it's important. All right? The nobles, the princes of the provinces, being before him, when he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the splendor of his excellent majesty for many days, 180 days in all. He's got 127 provinces. These are a lot of officials that are going to come in to feast for 180 days. All right, so we tend to think of ancient history as people just surviving. If you're able to feed this amount of people for 180 days and show the glorious riches of your kingdom, you're advanced to be able to do that. Keep that up, just to show you how rich it was and how advanced it was. So this is actually a relief of Xerxes the First or Ahasuerus. You get those two terms interchangeably because Ahasuerus is the Hebrew version of the name. In history, you're more than likely going to hear Xerxes. All right? So he ruled from 486 to 465 BC. Now, if we go back to Daniel, he's around 605 BC. When he's a teenager, he's going to live probably in his 80s, most scholars think. So it just shows you that some of the same players are fixing to come into the story. You'll recognize them. His mother was Atosa, the daughter of Cyrus. You remember Cyrus from the book of Daniel? Cyrus is the one who let the captives go free after 70 years. So he married, his mother was Cyrus's daughter. His father was Darius the First. If you remember, Darius is the one in the account of Daniel in the lion's den. Okay, so you have the Medes and the Persians. They're having a son that's coming from those two lines, which is Xerxes the First. And his grandfather is Cyrus the Great, of course. Now let me show you this picture. Archaeology has uncovered the citadel and the palace complex where he actually sat on his throne. This is excavations at Susa. French archaeologist Delfoy de Morgan de Meccan something. I cannot say that word. But I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you can try to see it. Can y'all see the footprint of it? Very detailed for a footprint, but it gives you an idea. They know exactly where his throne room was, how big the court was that he's holding these feasts in and everything, just because of the archaeology that they have uncovered. The throne room. The Apadana, a great throne hall measuring roughly 240 feet by 240 feet. It's massive, massive. It had massive column bases still in place, a 20-foot high limestone platform dais. So that's what the king would sit on, because the king has to be elevated. So if you ever see that word like a dais, it's just the elevated part where the throne would literally sit, where he would lord over his people. It's designed to support a wooden throne, matching throne imagery on Persepolis reliefs. Bricks are stamped with inscriptions such as Xerxes, great king, are embedded in the platform and in the walls. It's kind of similar to Nebuchadnezzar. He had to stamp his name on everything. All right. So one of the things you might not know is in this time, court rotations and seasonal context. They didn't stay in one palace. So most of the time in Susa, that was their winter residence. All right, so if he's doing this, it's believed it's to be a certain part of the year, just because they kind of went to all of but I mean, he's got 127 provinces. You know, he might have like a main campus, I guess you would say, but he's still got to kind of go around, make sure everything's being done. He's got a large area. So if you think Babylon as the head of fine gold, they have this area. When the Medes and the Persians team up, they have this area. When Alexander the Great comes in with Greece, it expands a little more. And then when you have Rome, it's got more territory than all. That is strategic. I want you to get this, and most people don't put this together, but it's strategic when it comes to the gospel, because Jesus is going to die during that period of Rome. And that's the time of the Pax Romana, the time of Roman peace, where they have extensive road systems. You're not going to have to go through different countries to spread the gospel, because it's all under one rule. So God knew what he was doing, having his son in the right timeline. Okay, let me keep going. Excavations at Susa and Persepolis revealed blue and white glazed bricks with lotus and rosette motifs. It's artistic. It reminds you a lot of the Ishtar Gate in Babylon. It was very decorative. Marble column fragments and bases, evidence of rich textile use and metal fittings in palace decor. Now let me give you the verses for that. And when these days were completed, the king made a feast lasting 7 days for all the people who were present in the Shushan or Susa citadel, from great to small. So it's like 128 days for his officials, and then he opens it up 7 days for everybody that's in that city. That makes sense. So in the court of the garden of the king's palace, now here's where it's important, because they have confirmed this. There were white and blue linen curtains fastened with cords of fine linen and purple on silver rods and marble pillars. And the couches were of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of alabaster, turquoise, and white and black marble. And they served drinks in golden vessels, each vessel being different from the other, with royal wine in abundance according to the generosity of the king. This was very rich. I mean, we're so rich, everybody gets a cup of gold, and it's totally different from each other. Right. I mean, this is a massive feast, but don't miss this. They're not just feasting. This is wintertime. And when wintertime, if you read the book, I think it's still in 1 Samuel, it might be in 2 Samuel, spring is the time that the kings go out to war. So what do you think they're doing in the wintertime? They're planning. So this is strategic. It's not just a feast. He's got all of his, underlings there. They're planning on their next move. So this is political as well. Okay. So the political function, war council and propaganda. Herodotus, if y'all ever heard of Herodotus, the famous Greek researcher, he records that around 483 BC, Xerxes convened nobles and military leaders to plan the invasion of Greece. Esther 1:3 places the feast in the 3rd year of his reign, and guess when that is? 483 BC. So history confirms it to the specific year. The 180-day event likely served multiple purposes. Again, war council gathering satraps, generals, nobles to discuss strategy and logistics. Imperial propaganda. Y'all didn't know they had propaganda back in ancient times. You got to sway the people somehow, right? It's nothing new. Nothing new. Displaying wealth and stability, divine favor to secure loyalty. Internal consolidation, reinforcing Xerxes' legitimacy and authority after secession and early revolts. He's just in the 3rd year of his reign. And a king, I think, during any time, I mean, you have to be aware of threats. Y'all remember when you study like the Greek rulers and even Roman rulers, what were they doing? There was always assassination attempts, right? Somebody else wants the throne. It's no different in any era. It's happening here as well. So the feast is therefore not a mere like decadence. They're not just feasting to feast. It's a carefully staged political theater in a real palace at a real moment in history. In accordance with the law, the drinking was not compulsory, for so the king had ordered all the officers of his household that they should do according to each man's pleasure. So you wasn't forced, to take part in any of this. And Queen Vashti also made a feast for the women in the royal palace, which belonged to King Ahasuerus. So back then, you didn't mix company, I guess you would say. The men had their feast, and then the women had their feast. They did not mix. All right, so on the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Bagtha, Zethar, and Carcass, 7 eunuchs who served in the presence of King Ahasuerus, to bring Queen Vashti before the king, wearing her royal crown in order to show her beauty to the people and the officials, for she was beautiful to behold. So, the men and the women don't mix unless the king says, oh, I want to show off my wife. That's exactly what he was doing. She's beautiful, and I want y'all to all see how beautiful she is. So, the king behind the text, he was known to be impulsive and volatile. Herodotus portrays Xerxes as quick to anger and prone to rash decisions. You're fixing to see that in a minute. Emotionally extreme, capable of tears and cruelty and rapid secession, easily manipulated by advisors and flattery. I can think of a few people like that now. People don't really change either, do they? We still combat humanity. All right? He famously ordered the Hellespont, which was the sea, to be whipped and branded with irons after a storm destroyed his bridges. What? I know you're thinking, what? Yeah, right. This is like a modern day, ancient day soap opera. Now, can you imagine being a king? And I'm gonna play king for a minute. Y'all go out there and whip the sea. It destroyed my bridges. I'm wondering if his people that had the whips were like, this guy's crazy. What? But it just shows how rash he was. Like, what's that gonna do? Nothing. So let me keep going. But Queen Vashti refused to come. I was right. Okay, women in here, what would you do? It is a different time.
You didn't do that to the king.
You did not do that to the king. You're
We could get by with your today. Maybe.
possible, depending on what country you're in. What country you're in. So she refuses to come at the king's command, brought by his eunuchs. Therefore the king was furious, and his anger burned within him. Well, if he whipped the sea and tried to brand it with irons, what is he going to do here? Then the king said to the wise men who understood the times, for this was the king's manner towards all who knew law and justice. So they knew the times. I'm going to come back to that. I have it highlighted for a reason. Those closest to him being, oh good grief, Karshena, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marcina, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media. Those 2 again who had access to the king's presence and who ranked highest in the kingdom. Now, the status and dignity of Persian queens. Okay, they were not mere ornaments. You weren't supposed to just call on them to parade them around, even if you're the king. It just wasn't, protocol back then. So Atosa, Xerxes' mother, she actually wielded enormous political influence and shaped secession. Amistris, Xerxes' historical queen, is portrayed in classical sources as fierce, ruthless, powerful, capable of orchestrating brutal punishments. Queens had their own quarters, attendants, and ceremonial roles. They were expected to embody dignity and royal honor. And honestly, to call her just to parade her around because she's pretty was really beneath the role. It's petty and vain to what she was supposed to represent.
She was hosting her own party, too.
Right. Yeah, right. So to summon Vashti to display herself before a drunken male crowd was actually a violation of royal decorum, a reduction of her status to that of a spectacle, which it was, an act beneath the dignity of the throne. And all of those are true, but it doesn't matter because he's going to get mad about it. So all of his close advisors, and this is why you have to be careful who you listen to, okay? What shall we do to Queen Vashti according to the law? Because she did not obey the command of King Ahasuerus brought to her by the eunuchs. And Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Queen Vashti has not only wronged the king, but also all the princes and all the people who were in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus. How'd she do that? How'd she wrong all of them? She didn't. They're twisting things here. For the queen's behavior will become known to all women, so they will despise their husbands in their eyes. When they report King Ahasuerus has commanded Queen Vashti to be brought in before him, but she did not come.
This sounds like a woman
But the thing is, they're twisting it, and he doesn't realize this is a huge manipulation. This is a huge manipulation. Because if you have a king and a queen ruling over a province, they can come together and be a power union, or if there's tension between them, it becomes a power struggle. Which one's stronger? The union. They want the struggle because it weakens the throne. Does that make sense? All right, so this is their ploy here. And they make it about everybody. Well, it's not just about the king. It's not just about the princes. It's about the whole kingdom. Women are going to think that, that their husbands can't tell them what to do anymore. We have to do something. This is a revolt. It's a rebellion. So their solution is a legal royal decree, reinforcing male authority in the households, making Vashti's fate a warning to other women. Now, I will remind you, legal decrees. Does anybody remember? Do what? Once it's done, you can't take it back. It's law. Okay? And the reply pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. And I want to pause here and say, you dummy, you fell for it. You fell for it. Like a big manipulation, you listen to it. Then he sent letters to all the king's provinces, all 127 provinces of this, to each province its own script, and to every people in their own language, that each man should be the master of his own house and speak in the language of his own people. Do you really have to have a legal, royal decree to tell a man to be the man of his household? You know what I'm saying? Like, it almost sounds ridiculous. Why do you need a legal decree to tell a man that? All right, let me keep going. Like Janet remembered, the law of the Medes and the Persians, once sealed, it's irrevocable. Vashti is removed and the queen's position becomes vacant. Here's the thing about it. If you try to research what actually happened to Vashti, there's several possibilities, but nothing's ever really like firm in what actually happened. Some people believe she was killed. Some people believe she was exiled. Some people just think she was put in the house of the women and just cared for her for the rest of her life. She couldn't come before the king anymore. So there's like 3 possibilities. Nobody knows which one it was. It doesn't say. Yeah, it doesn't say. Doesn't say. So what I want you to get here is in this book, there is hidden sovereignty. God does not speak. No prophet appears in this book. And there is no like overt miracle, like supernatural miracle, I guess you would say. God's name never appears in the book of Esther. Isn't that something? But yet he's all in it. He's all in it. That's why we're talking about hidden sovereignty. All right? After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was appeased, he remembered Vashti and what she had done, and what was decreed against her. Too late now. You signed it into law. Then said the king's servant that ministered unto him, let there be fair young virgins sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces, 127 of them, of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the fair young virgins to Shushan, or Susa the palace, to the house of the women, unto the custody of Haggai, the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things for purification be given to them. And let the maiden which pleaseth the king be queen instead of Vashti. And the thing pleased the king, and he did so. So how this decree worked, the satraps, which are like the governors, if you would say, received the orders. The local officials identified the eligible women. Couriers delivered instructions via the royal road. They had royal roads. Scribes recorded the names, origins, and family ties. Royal escorts would transport the women to Susa, and Haggai is going to receive them into the harem. So I don't want you to think, and this is kind of where we kind of put Esther a little bit like on a pedestal and think she's the only one. And even though we know she's going to be queen, there are other women. Because in the Medes and the Persians, they did have a harem of women. And there's a hierarchy to that. So you know where Esther like literally fits in. There is a queen. A head queen, I guess you would say. She held ceremonial authority, oversaw the royal women, managed internal politics, represented the empire in rituals, but there were also royal wives. That's the part we don't want to put that in this story, but it's true history. They were usually daughters of nobles or the governors, and they actually cemented political alliances. It's kind of like with Solomon. When Solomon had so many wives, they were all called wives, but they were political alliances. He married this one from this country to secure this. He married this one from this country to secure that. If you remember that. This is kind of the same thing. So there's a house of women. So you would have, that's why they call it like a harem of women. So you would have the queen and you would have the royal wives. Okay? Then there was the concubines selected for beauty. They could rise in influence if they bore sons. And then you have the term eunuchs, which manage logistics, communication, and security. These were some of the most trusted people under the king. I mean, they're handling a lot of things within the business of the kingdom. They controlled access to the king. Most of the time, people put like eunuchs like way down on the totem pole, but they weren't. They were not. So they served as political intermediaries. They were some of the most trusted. That's what you have to get when you read through this. Now in Shushan the palace, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity, which had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. He brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter. All right, so her ethnicity, Jewish exile. Esther is part of the remnants of those living in Susa, descendants of exiles taken by Nebuchadnezzar and allowed to remain after Cyrus's decree. Okay? Her names, Hadassah and Esther. So Hadassah actually means myrtle, symbolizing righteousness and restoration. And Esther likely comes from the old Persian stara, which means star, though some connect it to the goddess Ishtar. All right? So her dual names reflect her dual identity. She's Jewish by birth and Persian by role. All right, we see that in Scripture a lot. If I take you to the book of Ruth, she was a Moabite by birth, but she married in, and she actually came in. I want to say grafted into Israel, because remember what she told her mother-in-law: "Your people shall be my people. Your God shall be my God." So she integrated into the Jews. Her social status, politically invisible. Esther is a foreigner. She's a woman. She's an orphan, a member of a minority group. She has no royal lineage, living far from Jerusalem with no political connections. She should have never been considered for a royal wife. What'd she bring to the table? You know what I'm saying? It should have never happened. That's a miracle in itself, but it's why she hid her identity. All right, that's the biggest part that you need to get. It's why she hid her identity. So it came to pass when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when the many maidens gathered together unto Shushan the palace to the custody of Haggai, that Esther was brought also unto the king's house to the custody of Haggai, the keeper of women. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her the things for her purification, which such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens, which were meet to be given to her out of the king's house, and he preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of the women. So she gets her own attendants, she gets her things for purification. We're going to go over that in a second. But she's making an impression on him, and she's standing out from everybody else. Now, if y'all been to high school, right? What happens with some of the girls? They're preening, they're peacocking, they want the attention. I can imagine all these people competing to be queen. Well, you're right in my line of sight, Courtney. You may shift over. So the things from Susa, they have actually uncovered artifacts from Susa that actually backs this up. They uncovered alabaster jars, stone cosmetic containers, little pots, perfume flasks, residues of oils and aromatic compounds. Myrrh was actually imported into This city from East Africa, and it was used for skin purification, softening, fragrance, and ritual cleansing. In biblical times, what was myrrh used for? Burial. If it's good for your skin when you're alive. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here. Okay, so the court. Historically, eunuchs like Haggai were experts in court politics. They had to be. If they controlled access to the king, yeah, they had to know what was going on. They were skilled judges of character. They were gatekeepers of royal access. For Esther to win Haggai's favor, it means she displayed humility, grace, and intelligence, because everybody else in there was probably peacocking for attention. I imagine it was some conniving, sneaky battles going on between women. They wanted to be queen. She adapted quickly to palace expectations. She carried herself with dignity. She did not resist the process. Remember what I told you a queen was expected to be. She was supposed to be dignified. And Esther is a nobody. Like I said, she shouldn't have even been there. She had to adapt quickly. Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women of the house to know how Esther did and what should become of her. Now when every maid's turn was come to go into the king Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months according to the manner of women, for so it was in the days of their purifications were accomplished, to wit, 6 months with oil of myrrh and 6 months of sweet odors, and with the things for the purifying of women. They had a year of bathing in oils and sweet aromas. Probably so. You're probably right, because I know we all took showers last night and this morning, and I'm not smelling anything. I think a shower would have been sufficient. But this is how they did things back then. So right here, it kind of reminds you of Daniel in a sense, because it's God-given favor. You know, he done the same with Daniel. He's doing the same here. Because she could never open the doors herself if she told who she was. Okay, so Esther 13:14. Then thus came every maiden unto the king, whatsoever she desired was given to her to go out with her house, of the house of the women unto the king's house. What? I'm just gonna give you a gift. Whatever you request, I'm gonna give you. Well, what if I come in there and request 127 provinces? I wonder if any of them thought about that. You know, I mean, you could request anything. I bet a lot of it was jewels, gold, things like that. In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women to the custody of Shazgaz, the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. She came into the king no more, except the king delighted in her. So she couldn't get back to the king unless he really favored her and requested her, and that she were called by name. Better memorize her name, Ahasuerus, or she's not going to come. Now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come unto the king, she required nothing but what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed, and Esther obtained favor in the sight of all of them that looked upon her. So she didn't ask for anything like everybody else did. She trusted the king's chamberlain. I mean, he's the closest to the king. Who are you going to listen to? That's a wise decision that she made. So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus into the royal house in the 10th month, which was the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. So it was the 3rd year when we started, and now it's the 7th year of his reign. So time's passing. This doesn't happen very, very fast. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the other virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. I'm going to end up right here. The miracle. This is the miracle. It's not a supernatural miracle. in where we have like forces of nature that's happening. But the miracle is that she's a Jewish orphan that becomes queen of the Persian Empire. She's a nobody. She's a foreigner that replaces a noble Persian queen. A woman with no pedigree outranks daughters of the governors and the nobles. Historically, queens are chosen from noble families. Esther's rise is like unprecedented. That just didn't happen. There's no political alliance that's tied to this. So this is a God thing. This is that divine part where God elevates the humble to positions of influence for his purposes. I'll tell you another one he done that to. Moses, Joseph. It happens all throughout Scripture. All right, I'm going to pause there. Any questions on that? That makes sense? I know I went over a lot. And Esther's pretty short.